Hello and welcome to another episode of The New Frontier. Today we have an extremely special guest. I didn't tell him this, but 15% of our listeners are UK, the rest are kind of global. But for those in the UK, they'll recognize him for sure. It is Levi Levenfish. He's a co-founder of PerfectTed. It is the fastest growing energy brand in the UK, and it's the largest growing matcha brand in Europe. Started on the kitchen table with his wife and his brother. So Levi, bring you out. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Yeah, and as we were just discussing, we actually went to school together when we were like, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe like 4 to 7 or some age range like that. So it's really good to see you. It's been a while, but it's good to see you. I've seen you on TV a lot, but good to talk to you.
Vice versa, and thank you for having me on. It's very exciting. We're also both on North American time zone, which is funny, given we both should really be in London. I'm in New York and you're in Toronto.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess PerfectTed is really an incredible success story around branding and around kind of commerce and kind of more recently e-commerce. But I guess my first question is, obviously you went on Dragon's Den, which we'll come to, but kind of before Dragon's Den, in the early days, like how did the business start? What was the story there?
Yeah, sure. So the story of the business actually originates in the US. So myself and Teddy's my brother, he's my other co-founder, and Marissa's my wife, who's a third co-founder. We were all living in the US at the time. We were all at university in Philadelphia, and Marissa, my wife, has ADHD and anxiety. She's neurodiverse, but at the same time, she was working really hard in the library and then started a career in finance, so needed caffeine to keep her going and to stay focused. So she had a really bad relationship with coffee and energy drinks that basically kept her going and allowed her to work as hard as she needed to succeed at school and at university and then later in finance. But it got to a point where actually the habit was so bad that it was giving her jitters and crashes and was affecting her ADHD in a negative way. So she needed a kind of a resolution, and actually one of her friends introduced her to matcha, which is matcha in Japanese literally means powdered tea. It's a powdered green tea, which has an amino acid called L-theanine in it, which allows the caffeine to absorb slower into your bloodstream, basically give you longer lasting caffeine high, smoother caffeination, and no crashes, no jitters. It changed her life. She got myself and Teddy hooked on it. And then when we all moved to the UK, that was when we faced the issue because there was no matcha in the UK. So the UK market for matcha 3 years ago or so was basically just Pret a Manger. And for any of you in the UK listening, Pret has rubbish matcha. I'll say it publicly. That was the only matcha you could get. And for someone who consumed matcha every single day, it was very difficult for us. So we had to order matcha online from either the US or directly from Japan. And eventually we were ordering so much matcha that we thought, hang on a second, there must be a market for this. Typically, if you look at retail trends, we're a couple of years behind the US. The US market is pretty developed for matcha. Maybe there's something here. So we started selling our almost leftover matcha to cafes. We were walking around Shoreditch, basically with cocaine bags full of matcha, trying to shift it to cafes and being kicked out because people didn't want to have this weird green product until they did. And if you look at the growth story of matcha in the UK and the growth story of PerfectTed, they're very much in line. And if you look at Google search terms, you'll see that when we went on Dragon's Den, matcha kind of became an overnight success in the UK and has grown into kind of a massive market now, which we have helped grow, which is really exciting.
So the origin is, and I do want to talk about Dragon's Den beforehand. You literally had these bags. You're going around Shoreditch and you're trying to sell them to cafes. And the cafe would make it kind of like a cappuccino style thing. Is that how it worked?
Yeah. So matcha is quite an intimidating product because I think people feel that you have to make it in the traditional Japanese way, which with a bamboo whisk. But actually, it can be done with a milk frother or an electric whisk. It's really simple to produce. And for cafes, it's really good business because matcha is a premium product. It fetches really good margin. And when you buy it from us, it's really high quality and it's not expensive because we buy it at scale essentially. But we were walking around cafes trying to sell it, and people were just kicking us out. And the second part to that story is, as well as looking to build out a matcha business, I also kind of growing up playing sport, and Marissa and Teddy as well, and kind of being energy drink consumers to get through our finance jobs and university days, we didn't really feel like we resonated with the energy drink offerings out there. So if you think about the energy drink market, it's dominated by Red Bull and Monster.
Yeah, sugary rubbish that you don't want to drink. Yeah, or like full of God knows what, like 100 ingredients or
that, and you're not proud to have a Red Bull on your desk as a working professional.
I'd never drank Red Bull. Funny story, I would when I when I would used to get Jaeger bombs, I just couldn't drink them, so I'd just be like pouring them out over my shoulder because I had these friends who'd like buy the racks of Jaeger bombs. So I was like, I can't drink that stuff. It's not the Jaeger, it's literally the Red Bull, just like it's horrible. So no, I understand. But then, so you're selling these bags of matcha. I guess what I thought was very interesting, because I rewatched the Dragon's Den and a few other YouTube stuff last night, was when you went into the Dragon's Den, you had orders, I think, from Tesco, or your co-founders had orders from Tesco, but also you had the branding already done. Like the same branding that you have now with PerfectTed was already kind of on the bottle, which is quite impressive, because normally what happens with these brands like Reggae or whatever is they come in and they change the branding, and it's kind of like that's part of what they help you with. But for you guys, it looked like you kind of had everything in line, and it was just the visibility that you kind of needed. But I don't know, what was it from your perspective?
Yeah, the branding was pretty similar. It has evolved a little bit since.
Okay.
Less of a focus on matcha on pack and more a focus on healthy energy. But most of the infrastructure was there. We went in with a product. At the time we were doing, I think it was like £7,000-8,000 a month. And then the month before we aired, we were doing 20-ish, 30-ish thousand a month. We were growing really quickly, but from a small base. And then it aired in March 2023, and overnight we became honestly an e-com business, which is relevant for this podcast. We had hardly any e-com sales, and anyone who has a Shopify account will know that the cha-ching that Shopify makes when you make a sale. My Apple Watch was on fire. It was I thought it was a glitch, but we went from a brand not being known by anyone and being in a space, particularly matcha, less energy drinks, that is quite saturated and people just know the big guys, to be in front of 4.5-5 million people on television. And the brand just kind of exploded from a brand awareness perspective. And what we've always said is our product really, really are good. It's just that the number one barrier to sale is trying them, sample.
Yeah.
So being able to get more and more people to try it through kind of bundles, etc., on our website, and launching a week after into Tesco, I think really helped elevate the brand and build it out.
So just so I understand the timeline, you had these bags you're selling to cafes. At some point, you transitioned to a can. How did before Dragon's Den? Because when maybe it's slightly different, but honestly, to a casual observer who's obviously seen them in Tesco's and watching this from 2 years ago, whenever it was, like it looks roughly the same. So at what point did you go into like it's green, exactly? What point did you go into the can kind of and try and go that route?
Yes, this is a funny story. So we actually launched the product on Kickstarter in about June of 22, I guess it was, and were funded very quickly, probably through friends and family who liked us and wanted us to feel good about ourselves. We got funded very quickly, and we were in that Kickstarter campaign. We were trying to produce matcha lattes in a Tetra Pak or a can, basically ready to drink matcha lattes. So that was actually the original product. Energy drinks was not the original product. But like any entrepreneur, you kind of have to pivot. So what happened was we got funded on Kickstarter. We're about to go into production, and I get a call from the manufacturer that says, yeah, so we can't do it for you because Oatly and other alternative milk brands were growing so quickly that they'd taken all the production slots until 2025. So overnight, we had basically lost our entire business. And because we were 3 people around a kitchen table, we were nimble enough that we could pivot, look at the data and say, okay, instead of producing a latte, we'll produce an energy drink. And I think we got lucky with that because the energy drink category,
blessing in disguise, right?
100%. The energy drink category is like the fastest growing drink category in the soft drink space. But then you have other challenges, like when we're about to produce the energy drinks, I get a call from the manufacturer to say that the facility or the machine that we're about to use is set on fire. and we're meant to be producing 12,000 cans total across 3 flavors. So the good news is, if you want, you can produce 120,000 cans because that machine's not on fire. So our business again died overnight, but we ended up doing the larger run and again, blessing in disguise, because that larger production run was out and sold very, very quickly. Amazing.
Cool. So you're kind of at that stage, and you've gone Dragon's Den. I have some kind of notes from when I was watching last night. So you go into the den. They start the pitch with, the mission is to spread positive energy, which I love, and I want to come back to, because you're not selling an energy drink, you're selling, a feeling, which is very cool.
Sure.
You guys asked for 50K for 5% of the business. Sarah Davies says this is a case study of how to come into the den and knock it out the park. All of the Dragons offer. You end up with Stephen Bartlett, and I have from a video I watched of him, as you say, you kind of went in with 8K a month pre-den. You did 400K when the episode aired. You've then done, skipping ahead a bit, another round of investment with Stephen Bartlett for $1 million, and now you're doing $1 million a month in revenues, which is just incredible. So can you reflect on that, fill in any kind of, beyond the stats, the details there?
That's spot on. I mean, I actually wasn't on the Dragons Den episode. My brother and my wife were. I was working a second job at the time, which was in finance, and that was literally funding the business. We were using my paychecks and buying products with those paychecks, and that was how we funded the business. The business really did explode overnight. So that £400,000 was mostly online sales that came from the Dragons Den evening, and that kind of went on for a couple of weeks. Obviously died down after that, but you start to see repeat purchase. We also launched into Tesco that same week. So we kind of had a really good online and offline presence, which I think was pure luck in terms of timing. And then once you had the Tesco listing and it was selling really well in Tesco, plus the awareness, plus the Stephen piece, I think our typical food and beverage path would be, you get into one retailer, or you start in a farmer's market, you get into one retailer, and you slowly add. We basically had every supermarket ready to sign with us within a matter of kind of weeks or months. So if you look at our distribution now, with the fastest growing energy drink brand in the UK, but our drinks and our powders are available at, Waitrose, M&S, Sainsbury's, Tesco, Holland & Barrett, Asda, Ocado, the list kind of goes on, Morrison's, and it's being able to get that distribution really quickly, which I think was stemmed from Dragon's Den, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, one of my life goals is to go on. I don't think I could go now with this business, to be honest. Well, I think they prefer kind of the consumer stuff, but maybe in the next one I'll go on. But it's a really interesting point, which is like, 50K, in the grand scheme of things, is not a lot of money as an investment. It's not going to take it's not going to take you very far at all. But kind of having that like immediate 400K from sales, and hopefully, if it's a good product, you turn them into repeat customers. That's what the equity is coming for, right? And that's super valuable.
It is. We didn't have the stock to fill it. We thought we were going to have 1,000 orders, and we had way more than that. So we were literally sleeping in a warehouse, packing boxes, producing product overnight. It was a bit of a disaster, but in the best possible way. You talk about, just going back to that positive energy piece, you talk about brand and selling a feeling. That's really been the focus throughout. To be honest, I think that's a really good point.
And that's actually my next question. So I watched a YouTube video that came out a few days ago. Stephen Bartlett said, you got the investment in the first round, and he says, I want to build a cult around the brand.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of quite inflammatory phrasing in some ways, but also I kind of see you doing it. So have you managed to do this? How are you approaching this?
Cult is quite inflammatory language, and I think we want to build a cult in the best of way. Maybe building loyal followers is
no, but I think it's but this is what he says, right? It's about a tribe, a cult around a brand, and as I watched this, I was thinking to myself, completely different product, but I love Perplexity. I don't know if you've used it, the AI search, and I'm always telling people about Perplexity. I'm telling it to you now. I love this. It's like Google, but ChatGPT infused Google. So you ask it a question by voice and it will give you an answer. It's amazing. And I'm part of the tribe of Perplexity. I talk about it all the time, now. And is really hard to do, right? And it's what you guys are kind of building towards or have done.
Yeah, and so there's two sides to that. So building a brand and product people are obsessed with is easier when you have a product that has caffeine in it, because ultimately caffeine is addictive and it's part of people's ritual. So
Yeah.
in the same kind of language as cults, we're going to become a ritual for people. I think there is a massive community out there of people who are sick and tired of unhealthy energy drinks and coffee substitutes and just energy products generally fueling their lives, and are looking to make healthier changes. And so when we think about who our target market is and where we want to build this cult from, it comes from kind of three many different, but three core focuses, and that's how we're focusing on marketing as well, is working professionals, you and I, because I need caffeine, but I will absolutely not have a Monster or a Red Bull on my desk.
Never. Yeah.
Because I have an energy drink brand, because I'm not proud of it. There's social status to that as well, but I'm educated enough, and as are the population, to know that that's not good for you. And I think there's more and more information out there that people are kind of privy to it now. The second piece is females. So women have been kept out of the energy drink market for so long. If you think about who the leading brands are, it's Red Bull, Monster. They're hyper masculine in their branding and their naming and the products as well. So
Prime, super like macho YouTuber kind of vibe.
Right. So one of the reasons why retailers love us is because we're bringing incremental sales to the category. We're not just taking sales from Red Bull, because that's no benefit to them. We are adding new customers in the form of women to the energy drink category. And then there's also a big push on neurodiversity as well. So as you'll see, more and more people are being diagnosed with ADHD or other neurodiverse conditions. And Marissa, my wife, has kind of become a spokesperson for that in the UK in some sense, declaring it on Dragon's Den, which was like for one of the more public displays of admission of ADHD in the UK. As a result, she's kind of built a really good following of people who kind of find comfort in the fact that she's a female entrepreneur who's managed to build a successful business with ADHD. So there are so many different pockets of people we're going after who for so long have been pushed out of the energy category. And then the second side is matcha. Matcha is a product that's been around for 800 years. It was used by monks in Japan before meditation. It was used by samurai warriors before going into battle to stay focused. It's an incredible product. It's not a hype. It's a habit. And I think as we have shed more light on the product benefits and the science behind it, it's become a lot more mainstream. So when we started, it was just Pret, as I said. Now, if you look at who we supply matcha to and who is kind of has matcha on their menus, it's no longer just like coffee, matcha. Matcha has its own place on its menu. So some of our amazing partners like Joe and the Juice or Black Sheep Coffee, matcha was a massive part of their sales piece, because it's no longer just an add-on in a cafe. It's a significant part of the coffee caffeine market.
Very cool. So as I was listening to that, I kind of took away 3 key points. First of all, it's a repeat purchase. You're trying to get it to be a ritual for people. Secondly, you guys it sounds like you have a super tight target market. You understand the target market that you're going after, and it's one which is bringing in incremental sales to a category with females don't drink energy drinks. And then lastly, you have this kind of spokesperson type piece of your wife, and I think she's the CEO, chief energy officer, or I don't know how the roles are split in early stage startup, but she's obviously one of the founders kind of talking about this. So I'm going to ask you kind of in more details of each of them. Like, number one, how do you get people to make that part of their ritual? So a lot of consumer brands will be listening to this, hopefully not in the matcha category, but in their various categories. How do you get that repeat purchase?
So there's 2 sides to the business. There's 3 sides to the business, but on the energy drink side, I think the number one way to get people to make it part of their habit when there's so many alternatives out there is sampling. So we're putting a massive focus on giving out free cans outside offices, or less so gyms, but really kind of where people need it most. So offices, train stations, etc. As they're on their commutes, building it into their ritual in that sense. Then on the matcha powder side, matcha powder, as I said, is an intimidating product. It's typically been premium, and people have avoided it because it's expensive and they don't know how to use it. So making that more accessible. We've just launched my marketing team's going to kill me for saying this. We've just launched a bunch of new products with Holland and Barrett, actually. So flavored matcha powder and matcha Nespresso pods,
Wow, very cool.
as well as matcha starter kits, just that allow people to make the drink really easily, and that removes the barrier of fear or of avoiding making it because they don't know how to. So that's the second bit. And then the third bit, which has been a really interesting part of our business, is the food service piece. So the Joe and the Juice and the Black Sheep coffee, when we're on their menus with our logo and we're branded on those menus, there becomes an association and it becomes normalized. So they'll go to Black Sheep, or they'll go to Joe and the Juice, or they'll go to anywhere else really and get a matcha. And if it's made properly, or if it's made with PerfectTed matcha, hopefully it's a really good experience. And they try it, they recognize how valuable it can be. That then converts into online purchase or offline purchase in retail.
That's really interesting. So it's a multi-pronged strategy to kind of get people to associate PerfectTed with matcha, and kind of ingrain it into their ritual. That's really interesting. So maybe you touched on this slightly, but I mean, I could guess your answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So second point was about your target market and female. Like how in the marketing side of it are you approaching these people other than outside offices and train stations? Like, other than the bit you talked about, how are you getting to this target market?
Yeah, so I'll tell you how we're not doing it. We're not doing it through digital ad spend. We spend £400 a month or so on Amazon search terms. Nothing on meta ads really. I should just turn them off because the cost to acquire customers is so high, and I think it's so saturated out there. There are so many D2C brands, so we're not doing it through that. We're doing it through building community. So building community on social media, but also with real life in-person events, whether it's sponsoring running clubs or sponsoring female founder events, community events, having our own community. Building a cult, I think you can't build that purely from digital ads. It's way too transactional. You really have to bring people in. And I think a lot of that requires in-person. We also have a student ambassador program where students are working with other students on site, on campuses, outside libraries, and sampling it. So really the in-person high touch piece we find far more valuable than pushing out digital ads, which are far.
And it's such a stronger foundation to a business, right? Because if you're relying on meta ads, the second you turn that off. But you guys we've not spent any money on digital ads.
Plus organic socials, right? We're growing our social following, but the reason why Stephen Bartlett made so much sense is because of his social following and because of the social influence he has within with our community. Exactly. So if you think about who his target demographic is, it's working professionals, and it also, I think, leans women as well. So it aligns so well for us.
Is it LinkedIn is the main one you guys are on?
LinkedIn is big for our founders, like for myself and other founders, and the team. The team posts regularly. Plus, Stephen's community is big on LinkedIn. But we've just become the latest sponsor to Diary of a CEO, the podcast, and that's been really kind of good for brand awareness in a non-pushy way, to be honest.
Yeah, very, very cool. So the last kind of thread on this was the spokesperson on an issue. Like, you guys have picked an issue. It's a very authentic issue because it's why the business started. But maybe if you're in the shoes of people who don't, might not have that kind of authentic. Not everyone has an authentic issue, and I this is something that I've had to come to terms with as I've been raising money, which is like, sometimes your business isn't trying to change the world for the better, right? Sometimes you're just very excited about a problem, but anyway, how would you get people to become that spokesperson on an issue, or recommend them to do?
It doesn't need to be around neurodiversity. It's an important piece for us, and it's kind of why the business started. It's a thread that stays with us. I think if you look at also from a marketing perspective, where trends are going on neurodiversity, diagnoses are going up as people know more and more about it. But everyone knows somebody who either is diagnosed or thinks they might have ADHD. And if you think about that bigger picture, this is a good product to recommend to people. It's a bit like why we named the brand PerfectTed. Like, everyone knows a TED.
Is that after Teddy, or is that just a coincidence?
I'm Levi, and there's a famous, obviously, denim brand, which is called Levi's. Marissa, we all agree, doesn't roll off the tongue. And everyone knows a TED in the same way that everyone knows someone who I think is suffering from something neurodivergent or is suffering from anxiety or ADHD or might be suffering from that. Everyone knows someone called a Ted, whether it's a dog or,
Yeah.
or a postman or someone. It just feels very human. I think if you look at our social media, if you look at how we market, it's humans and faces. It's never product shots. Unlike traditional food and bev brands, where if you go on their Instagram or their TikTok, it's literally just product shots of someone drinking it and pretending to feel good. We don't have that. It's very much human stories and founder and team led. So I think we wanted to run that through with our marketing as well and focus on people and feelings and how the product makes you feel, as opposed to just like, this is a product. It is green,
Makes sense. So I guess switching slightly, this is an e-commerce podcast. Lots of founders listen to this as well, so hopefully some female and some will drink it, but predominantly e-commerce is roughly 10% of your business. You said to me earlier, talk to me about your e-commerce strategy.
We have an amazing lady working in e-commerce for us, and the e-commerce strategy is not so complex. I think people often overthink it. E-commerce is a really good channel for us because, particularly on the matcha powder, it ships really well. It's inexpensive to ship. It's light. The drinks are harder because you're basically
heavy,
shipping,
bulky.
Heavy, bulky, shipping liquid. But what we've really done is focus heavily on the UK. I think a lot of people would just quickly rush and set up Amazon Netherlands, Amazon Germany, and then get the Shopify. Like we've really focused on the UK until we have product market fit here, which we now do. And we're starting to look beyond the UK border. But the strategy has been to use our website really and Shopify as a landing page for the community for new product launches. It's not our biggest channel. It never will be. But it's a place where the community can come to understand about matcha, learn from it, read blogs, etc., get product recipes, but also see new drops. So all of our new product drops will go through the website first. That way we can really build a database in the community and a loyal following, not just a following, and then launch those products into retail. It also allows us to collect really good data, but we're not a pure play e-com brand. I think what we've done really well is balance the online and offline channels through retail channels like Tesco and online.
Retail is so you've got kind of three parts to the business. It sounds like you've got retail, you've got like strategic partnerships, like Pret a Manger, I think you mentioned, was that one of them?
Not Pret, like Joe and the Juice.
Joe and the Juice. And then e-commerce. So could you share percentages, or are you?
I can. So e-com's like 10%. Obviously changes any given month because ordering cycles, but I'd say retail is about 50 to 60% in any given month, and then food service, we call it, which is cafes around the world, and we're in about 45 different countries with that. That's between 30 and 40% of our business. So it's nicely diversified too. But as I said to you, it's like when people go into a cafe and try PerfectTed.
That's a key one, right? Getting that name there is a key one. So, I mean, you've almost done it. I don't want to say e-commerce is an afterthought, but you were retail first. I mean, you were cafe first from hearing your story. Like that was the original play. And that is a different strategy to most brands that I see, but it obviously is, it's where everyone wants to end up, right? People want to end up in the Tesco's and whatever. So kind of just going there, going there first, why not, right? Like if you can do it.
Yeah, I think e-com has become more and more complex when really what it should be is, and you're working with companies to do this, is try and simplify it and make it more efficient, which I know you guys are doing a really good job of. I think people stress about having to spend a bunch of money and keeping up with other e-com brands and finding the only way they can do it is just spend. It's quite a dangerous place to be, and we've done a really good job of avoiding it. Although when you see other food and beverage brands that are doing it to a very heavy degree, you can be drawn in and start to think, oh shit, I should hire like a head of growth, start spending money.
I mean, honestly, I think the strategy you have is a good one. Obviously, it's going very well, but if people are seeing PerfectTed in Joe and the Juice, and then they're searching on Amazon, they don't want to buy a competitor matcha brand. They want to buy the one they tried because they know that they like it. So it's a really unique kind of defensibility piece you have there. And I did want to ask you about competition, and maybe now is a good time to ask because we're getting there. I mean, I love competition. I think it's a great thing. We have many, I look at, we don't have direct competitors, but we have many different competitors across different spaces. I guess maybe with like a matcha drink, it might be easier to have, to replicate. Have you seen any competition kind of emerging? Maybe even like what I was thinking, like the Coca-Colas, like launching matcha or something who could, someone who's got a big brand name that could actually go parallel into this space.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because a lot of the larger, like Red Bull, for example, I don't think Red Bull could ever launch.
They couldn't, right?
Because it would cannibalize. It would be like an admission of guilt almost. It would cannibalize their sales, right?
Yeah.
Someone like Coke could enter the category. Coke, I think Coke backed Monster and Pepsi backed Celsius, and then that was, if I'm correct. We really struggled to can matcha. It's been tried before. It's been really difficult. We have kind of proprietary recipe and production that allows us to do it. I'm not saying that Coke couldn't figure it out. I'm sure they could. They've got enough means to do it. I'm not denying that. But I think with brands like Coke, they have such large market share, and other energy brands have such large market share what they're doing. I think it's kind of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We see more competition from smaller independent brands who are starting up. There are a couple of others in our space on the energy drink side, but they're more focused on natural energy or kind of flavor recipe or flavor matching to Red Bull and Monster, as opposed to innovating and going kind of with a totally new thing, which is what we've gone for. So I think we kind of are standalone. There's always going to be competition, and we like competition. But ultimately, energy drink category is growing 10-15% year over year. It's growing rapidly. So you're going to have entrants. But for us, it's always been, if we can really create a strong foothold, build community, and get enough distribution and really build rate of sale, then we should be good. On the matcha powder side, again, like the barriers to entry aren't that high, to be honest. You can buy matcha from Japan in bulk. Obviously, we get it much cheaper because we're buying in at such scale, which allows us to kind of sell it cheaper, obviously, and build margin for retailers. But the barriers of entry to start a drinks company or a matcha company aren't particularly high. That's why so much of what we're working on is brand. We're not necessarily, I mean, the product is amazing. I drink it every day. Obviously, I'm biased, but it speaks for itself. People live by our products, but really it's the brand that kind of holds the most value.
Do you worry about competition? Do you ever think about it? Is there something ever that is in your mind?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you think about like in a supermarket, we look at our rate of sale, and our rate of sale is just a number, if not benchmarked against competition. So it's all relative. I mean, performance in a supermarket is all relative to how everyone else is performing. If everyone else is doing terribly and you're doing terribly, but you're doing less terribly than you're doing well, right? So it's all about competition and how they're doing. On new entrants into matcha, it's very Instagrammable matcha, and there are quite a number of new players joining. But again, what they're targeting is much more lifestyle. I think we've done a really good job of making it more functional about brand as opposed to just.
Do you ever taste these and say, so what I'll just give you an example. I know my competition in like certain aspects. So part of our business is product image generation. That's one piece of it, right? Yeah. And I will be looking at the competitors, and I'll be going to my team and I'll be generating an image on them, same prompt, and on us. And if ours isn't 10x better and quicker, I'll be going, guys, what the hell is going on here? Like, So do you like, are you doing this, or is that just like a weird Max obsession? Or
No, I'm obsessed with it too. If you look at our office fridge, it's full of PerfectTed, but it's also full of other energy drinks, because I probably try another energy drink every day. There's so many out there. And when I come to the US, I bring a bunch of energy drinks back for the team to try, because there's so much innovation in the space, and I want to make sure we're ahead of the curve always. And then on matcha powder, again, I'll try other people's matcha powders. If someone's launched a matcha or a flavored matcha or a functional matcha that has, I don't know, collagen in it, for example, of course I'll try it, because it's always good to know. I think people who try to ignore competition are just naive, because they're the people that are going to overtake you if anyone will.
100%. I mean, like when I was at Amazon, Jeff Bezos, we'd always have the whole famous Jeff Bezos phrase, which is like focus on customers, not competition, which is definitely true. Like you 100% have to focus on customers, number one.
Yeah,
But I
cool.
think I've learned it's an absolute luxury of working in a company like Amazon where you own the market. Like you're never worried about what people do. And like only very recently are they worried about Temu or something, and then they go and try and do something similar. But like
Yeah.
for the 6 years I was there, like Amazon didn't worry about anyone, right? So it's like a
Yeah.
big luxury to be like, oh, forget the competition. And like in a small business, you want to know, you want to see what people are doing, and you know for sure that they're checking you out and trying to copy you for sure.
So on your business, for example, you obviously have competition. You mentioned it. Do you find competition is the biggest risk, or do you find it's that consumer uptake? What is it?
The biggest risk to the business. I think the biggest risk to the business, like I was very worried when we started doing this that something would happen, like you'd have to label AI generated content and it would kill the business overnight. So
Yeah.
my biggest worry was that you generate your lifestyle images, your infographics, and whatever on e-content for your product listing, and then it has to say generated by AI. And I was very very worried about this. And funnily enough, when Amazon have their own image generation, which they launched, which is actually definitely worse than e-content. Not that they won't be good eventually, but like if you were to put a PerfectTed bottle and do one on e-content, one in Amazon, ours would be better. And everyone was messaging me like, "Oh my god, like, are you okay? Like, how do you feel about this?" And I was honestly relieved. I was so relieved because I was like, "Thank God they are doing this. Like, AI generated content is like here to stay." Because we launched the business like 2 weeks after it was possible to do this. So for the early 6 months, I was really worried like there'd be like legislation or like some massive platform kind of regulation shift which would kill us. Now we're more focused on optimizing for the Amazon algorithms, so we're like that's the focus. And I don't really feel like we compete here because we have got a team of AI researchers. We're doing our own like proprietary research. We've got our patents, so we're like very focused on like optimizing for these algorithms. I don't think anyone is kind of better than us. So I worry about competition in terms of like, is the image quality good enough, better than the competition? Is it quicker? Like, how is it generating infographics from Canva compared to e-content? Like all of it, I worry about all of the stuff, but like, I think the core essence of our business is different, and I feel like maybe in a different way yours are similar because you have your brand. Like no one's going to take your brand away, right? Like that's always going to be yours, and it's a differentiation.
What about so for founder listeners out there, I know this is
Yeah,
really hard question.
you've done a switch on me, but
Yeah,
you've done a pseudo switch here. But
I was done talking. I was going to ask a question. For a brand like us, I'll bring it back to us for a second. For a brand like us, what would you focus on from an images perspective? What do you think performs best? If you were us, what would you be looking at?
I tell you what, we're working with our customers now, which is Amazon are rolling out this new algorithm. It's called Cosmo. Basically, rather than doing keyword-based matching, it's intent-based matching. So the example they give in their science papers is if a pregnant woman searches on Amazon for slippers, they will give her slip-resistant shoes, no matter the fact that she hasn't put in pregnant. The listing hasn't put like for pregnant women, and she hasn't put in slip-resistant. So we're moving away from this keyword matching space. We're moving into this intent-based matching. The end goal of this, if we look at this in 6 months or a year's time, is that everyone is going to have a totally different experience when they're shopping on e-commerce. It's going to be hyper personalized to them, and Amazon and Shopify and Google are going to have like these super advanced algorithms which are personalizing stuff for you. And our vision at e-content is we're helping the vendors to optimize for these, right? That's what we're doing. So for you guys, I think it's a great opportunity because, like, following your thesis, you're saying to me, oh, like if I'm a woman and I'm putting an energy drink, Amazon will realize that like the conversion would be in theory better by showing them a PerfectTed than a Red Bull, even if you don't have like if for argument's sake you haven't bid on the keyword energy drink, none of that. Like it's just a better match. So for you, like number one thing is to get your target audience in the images. These AI models are multimodal, so they can read, they can view the images as well as the text now. And if you know that your working women is your like key target market, you should have pictures of these women drinking PerfectTed in your product listings. Image
Agreed.
5 and 6. So that's what we help people do on e-content. That would be number one. Number two, I think the text is slightly different. You want to be describing more the why a customer would use this. So like re-energize after work, all this kind of like contextual stuff, rather than just trying to write what we used to saw customers do, which is like energy drink matcha. Like, your text is basically written like 50 keywords kind of like scrambled in. It doesn't make sense to a human. You'd want to write the copy a bit more like, a refuel after work. If you're getting caffeine jitters, this is good for you. So basically, like the way to think about it is these algorithms are going to get smarter and smarter till they're smarter than humans. So like explaining it well to a human is going to be more beneficial than this like keyword matching. So those would be my two, that would be my two kind of
Super interesting.
Advice. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn it back around on you though. I'm going to
spin it back from the show.
There we go. So we're going to spin it back. Business long-term strategy. So currently, and I might be slightly wrong, you kind of have 4 flavors of drinks. You have multi-packs. You have some accessories like the frothers and powder. So you kind of have like 10, 15 SKUs in total at the moment, something like this.
Yeah.
What is the strategy and the vision of the business?
So strategy of the business is for the next 12 months, I'll focus on the next 12 months and I'll tell you longer term. I think Marissa said on Dragons then it was world domination.
Yeah.
Which I love. But I think the next 12 months, it's really focused on existing distribution. So we have so many doors, basically they call them, so many retail outlets for growing sales in those outlets. It's bringing these new products to market that I've just mentioned, the flavors, pouches, and the pods. And it's also about building community as well. So I feel like we're scratching the surface on what we could be doing on the community side. And Stephen Ball is really helping with that. So the vision is for the business to do those pieces and grow from the £1 million a month, so £12 million a year run rate, to 25, 30 in the next 12 months or so. And then continue to scale. I think international is an interesting piece for us. We've launched heavily in the Netherlands. I think we'd like to do more in the EU as well. No interest in the US. No interest in the Far East, and the Middle East is a really good market for us as well. So it's doing more of the same, and it's getting better in what we're doing. I think when you start a business, you're trying to do 1,000 things, and you probably feel the same way. I think it's all about finding product market fit, finding your niche, and marketing it really, really effectively. I would rather market 3 key customer demographics really, really well 100%. Than try and go out to everyone. And that's what I've learned. Like, at the beginning of the business, you're just like trying to find who your customer is. I think we've now found that, and it's really going hard and doubling down on that.
So does this mean you're going to have offices all over Europe, having events in France and Germany? And yeah.
If you think, so bigger picture, if you think about where we're sampling, you'll never see us sampling. You're not never, but I'd rather sample at an office than a gym, because although we're in sports and energy, we're not known as like a hydration drink. We're known as like a mental performance drink, not just a physical performance drink. So I would rather let other more kind of hyper masculine energy focused brands kind of build saturation in gyms, and us to focus on what I think is our biggest customer demographic, which is working professionals.
So you'll be in all the busy office squares across Europe.
I hope so. If we can get our act together and get it organized,
And that's the community side, and then you kind of expanding number of SKUs. So is that like you're doubling kind of your range, basically?
Doubling the range, and then, as you know, online you'll have bundles and you'll have variations. And I also would like to spend the next 12, 18 months, we discuss it as a team, trying to really understand how we can differentiate our online offering from our offline offering, whether it's pack size, format, bundle, etc. Right now, online is very much an extension of the retail store, i.e. you can buy, bigger format, but you can buy apple raspberry flavor in Tesco. You can also buy it online. There's not that much differentiated about our e-commerce, maybe why it reflects only 10% of our business. So I think I'd like to really build differentiation on our website and Amazon in terms of pack format that's really custom to what the online shopper wants, as opposed to just it being an extension of retail.
Would you be looking at, rapid delivery? I'm talking like Getida, Gorillas, like this kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're on Zap and we're on Deliveroo, I think through Waitrose. And I think we might be launching on Getir. We've been approached by all of them. Yes, ultimately, I don't know like if I necessarily believe that much in that model.
No,
although
it's a terrible business model. I can tell you that because we assessed it at Amazon. Like these guys are all going to go out of business. But
yeah, like I can wait if I order our drinks on Prime, I can wait a day or like a day and a half to get the drinks. I don't necessarily need it now. If I need something now, particularly food, and I live in a city, which is where most of our customers are.
You
cities.
walk to the Tesco's. Yeah, I'm the same. I actually would enjoy the walk, especially if you're working from home or whatever. You would just walk there. So that makes like that. I mean, I guess the community aspect is special, but in terms of like, okay, we're doubling down on product lines or whatever, that's kind of what I'd expect you to say. What does world domination look like? How do you get from 20 SKUs to world domination? What's the big picture vision?
Yeah, I think staying focused is the number one thing. I really don't want. I think the US is an example. I keep saying no to the US, which is tough because my wife's American, and she probably wants to go home at some point. As do I think I'd like to go back to the US at some point. But the US is like a very much a focus for us on the food service piece. We work with Joe the Juice and other brands in the US on the matcha powder side and other ingredients. But the can market is so competitive. If you go to any US listeners, go to like a Walgreens or a CVS or a Target, the fridge is like the craziest thing in the world. So if celebrities like The Rock have had 2 or 3 failed energy drinks, like that's not where our best use of time is spent. So world domination probably looks like UK and Europe domination first, and then work out how far that gets us. Who knows if we get bought at that point? Who knows if we scale it to the US with a distribution partner? Who knows? I can only think about like 1, 2 years ahead, but we're on an amazing growth path. And
does this end in an IPO? So does this end like, I don't know, have Red Bull IPO'd? I don't know.
It's interesting. Red Bull public, Rebel's private. But Monster is Red Bull's private. I actually don't know.
So is the plan like an IPO, or is the plan? I mean, have you looked up what Monster Energy is, sold for or something like this?
Yeah. Monster and Celsius are both kind of 2 public market comps, probably, and they're trading at like 9-10 times revenue, I believe, when I last checked. But IPO is a good fit. It's quite an American model, but
market cap 50 billion.
For
Monster. So there we go.
We're close. So it depends like how. So it's interesting. You start thinking when you get to the scale of the business we're at now, and we're not huge, but I feel like we grow really quickly, and I don't think it'll be too long before we double and triple the size of the business. What we're understanding from people who have done this before is you get to a certain scale, and then you're either too big to be bought or too small to be bought, depending on who the purchaser is. So you can either get bought by private equity, and then if you grow too big, you can't get bought by a large food brand like
Coca-Cola,
because you're above kind of what they typically want to pay for a brand, and then you kind of get stuck in the IPO phase. You're too small for an IPO. So if you look at a brand like Huel, for example, then they're doing 120 million this year or last year in revenue. I think they may be in this weird chasm of not necessarily having a purchaser. I could be totally wrong, and they could announce a sale any day. But I think the only way that they could sell now is really through IPO. So we're really thinking about how to manage that as we grow.
So, I mean, this may be far ahead, but maybe investors have asked you, do you imagine yourself going down a Coca-Cola route and saying, okay, like we've nailed PerfectTed, right? Like Coca-Cola, world famous. Now we're going to launch like a totally separate crisp brand and a totally separate, we're just going to become like a modern FMCG. Maybe it's all loosely connected with like, we're going to bring people great energy, but like, Teddy works on PerfectTed, and then Levi goes off and builds the next one.
It feels too far ahead. I don't know. I think
you haven't.
We are adding things to our product line, and we're doing really cool partnerships. We just did a partnership with On Bar, which is a vegan chocolate brand in the UK, and we do a matcha chocolate bar, which perform really, really well. And we're looking at other product lines with partners. But I think for us, it's all about staying really, really focused. Again, it's like across the business, it's on finance, on marketing, on ops. Like I think the number one thing that will help us grow really quickly is if we stay focused on our core competence.
I totally agree. And I totally agree. I'm just wondering, I know, like, I know
Sounds fun,
you're being funded by Stephen Bartlett, so I don't know, like, how often you've had, like, other VC conversations, maybe you did, but they want to know, right? They're like, I'm saying, yeah, like, we're focusing on product listings. We're just going to optimize our product listings. They're like, okay, great. But what's the plan to become $1 billion company? Because they're not going to invest a penny into you unless they believe that you have that.
Yeah, of course. There'll be new promotions of existing products. Like we've just launched literally this week, the flavored pods and flavored pouches, which I believe could be bigger than even the products we have right now.
Like Nespresso pods.
Exactly. It's an extension of all of that. So it's doing more and more and more. And I also think being proactive, but also being reactive to market trends. We're very data led in how we think. If we see an adjacent market that is strategic to us, I don't see why we wouldn't launch a matcha or energy related brand or product. There might be something in the works. We'll see. I can't share too much.
Fair enough. I mean, it makes sense. Like it's an incredible brand, and you want to focus on building that and developing product lines. And like like focus is so, as you say, focus is so important. And I
look at Red Bull. I mean, Red Bull has such an amazing market share, and they're not doing like Red Bull sweets or Red Bull bars.
No, and I listened to this amazing podcast yesterday about Microsoft, and Bill Gates is kind of saying at Microsoft, like, money isn't his problem. He has all the money in the world, right? Like they're literally like a cash machine in the 2010s, whenever it was. His problem was focus and talent. Like he didn't have, he had a limited amount of talented people, and there's only a certain amount of intelligent, talented people, and you put them all into developing Xbox. And it hurts because you don't have your best people working in Windows and XP. Like, and his constrained resource was like, we can't just go and do everything. We're talent.
Yeah. Not to say that we're Microsoft, we're not.
No, but it's a good way, right? Like your competition, like Red Bull can't necessarily just go and launch PerfectTed because they're so like they've got to keep Red Bull moving along, right? You can't just go and copy something else.
Yeah, but on the matcha side, for example, when people, and this goes back to your question about incumbents and competition, when people do come into the matcha market as competitors, I actually don't care. I think it's good for us.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
It helps. We're in a product space where it's not so saturated, and it actually builds like market acceptance of the product. So
yeah, and you're the premium. You're the the first there, the premium one. And like I totally feel the same. I see these like AI listing generators. I'm like, yeah, you could pay $30 and use some shitty thing that someone's cooked up in 2 weeks, or you could like use the one that's been here for 2 years and got the backing of eBay Ventures, like Mr. Seller. Like,
what's your plan for e-content? Tell me.
So what's our plan for e-content? I think we will be going multi-marketplace. So like we are very much optimized for Amazon. We have AI researchers like studying the Amazon papers, doing experiments. We need to go, we want to be Walmart, we want to be eBay. Like we've just launched eBay actually, but like it's not a focus of ours. So we want to be kind of optimizing customers' product listings to get to the top of search for every marketplace, and Google as well. We kind of do a bit of Amazon and Google at the moment, so that's number one. I think in the long term, like there's so much tech work that we could be doing. Like we could have really, really smart systems that are like working out how to optimize the products for seasonality. So someone's searching for someone's searching for energy drink in December and they're searching for it in May. Eventually these AI systems are going to give them different stuff because it's going to understand the different contexts of those searches. Maybe energy drink is a bad example, but if you think about barbecue grills or like lots of categories, it is seasonal, and these systems are going to do it. So optimizing content on a seasonality basis is a big is a big thing that we need to achieve, and kind of we did something for Christmas last year, but we want it to be like every month, really dynamically optimized. So we have like deeper, more optimization, more marketplaces. And then I guess once we're done with product listings, we could look at social media. We could generate content for TikTok, for Instagram, for other places. I believe that the AI is getting good enough that you're going to have like AI avatars on TikTok doing dances. So like we're not quite there yet, but in a year's time, like we could give you the PerfectTed avatar. They could be a woman in their late 20s in a.
I just saw I think Sherlock's had like an AI generated coworker or something that was quite cool. But okay, so that's where you want it to go. And reverse question back to you: how does the business scale? Where does it go? How do you do you IPO? Do you exit? What's the dream scenario next 3-5 years?
I see we have a question in the chat, from Jack Miller. So we'll get to the question afterwards. When you're raising cash, I'm raising money. Like if you don't have a plan for $1 billion in valuation, don't even go to a meeting. And $1 billion in valuation means you have a plan to go to 100 million revenue. Based in my space, I don't know what your multiples 10x as well, right? So hopefully. So you need to have a plan to go to 100 million at least, and then say we'll have a 10x. So yeah, that can be the only plan. And if in my space, if you're doing anything other than that, don't even go to, like, there's no point going to a VC call. They will look at you, they'll have a chat, but if they don't see that and believe that, they're not going to invest. Jack Miller, good friend of mine, says, enjoying the chat, fellas. Levi, how did you decide to launch the pods? I guess this is a coffee pods rather than the podcast. Was there based on retail data /trends?
Yes, good question, Jack. It was around retail data /trends. If you look at kind of what sells really well in the tea coffee aisles, it's Nespresso pods do really well in major supermarkets. But also it goes around back to our thesis of trying to make matcha really simple for people, to remove that barrier to purchase, which is kind of trying it or sampling it. So it's far less scary to put an espresso pod in an espresso machine, albeit not everyone has one, than it is to whisk matcha with a bamboo whisk and feel like you haven't got all the tools. So it was based on data, it was based on consumer trends, and probably based on instinct as well. Don't know how it's going to go. It just launched this week. Go down to Holland & Barrett and buy it. It's a really, really good product. And I really enjoy it, but I'm obviously extremely biased.
I will try it when I'm back in London. I'm excited to. I have 2 more questions for you, and we're getting close to time, and I don't want to keep you too long, Levi.
Yeah.
Question number 1, have to ask, because we are an AI podcast. Are you using AI at all in the business?
Yeah, I use ChatGPT to respond to some things. I do. Yeah, we do. We in different ways. I know that the marketing team is using AI for some imagery and some mock-ups.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the ops team, to be honest, is using AI, particularly like text AI functions to put together, whether it's like business policies or even just like documents that are really straightforward and kind of stock, instead of going and finding it on like one of those free legal websites or paying a lawyer to do it. Like if it's really, really basic, using ChatGPT to get the base, even for contracts and things. Most startups don't need to pay a lawyer 10 grand. If your contract is fairly straightforward, you can use AI to build that for you. I wouldn't start putting personal or private business information into an AI search generator, but yeah, we don't do enough of it. But at the same time, our business is pretty straightforward. We make and sell drinks and matcha powder in different formats. And because our business is only about 10% online, I do think as the business scales to be more digital heavy, there'll be more opportunities to use things like e-content. And I'm going to introduce
there we go.
to our digital marketing team right after this, actually.
Oh, there we go. Well, it would be an absolute pleasure. My last question for you, advice, people building consumer brands. I know you have to run, so maybe 60 seconds on any advice you have for founders. female founders as well, given that, you know, that's the focus?
Advice for entrepreneurs starting consumer brands. It's pretty cliche, but I would just say, go at it, go big, go home. I was always told by I'll talk about more about food and bev, but other food and bev founders who have done this before, start in a farmer's market, really find your customer, really feel it, really get to know your product. I kind of disagree in such a fast moving space, depending on what you're building. I think go to market quick, make a lot of mistakes, break things, fix them, and find product market fit that way. I'll say the statement here. When we first launched, we were approached by Holland & Barrett. They're a great partner. They approached us when we had just launched, and they said to us, we want to launch in 800 stores or something. We said, oh my God, you know, we went to all of our advisors, people who've done it before, people who are in food and bev. We said to them, what do you think we should do? I think maybe 5% said list with them. The other 95 said, no, don't list with them. You'll get swallowed up, and you won't perform, and you won't drive rate of sale, and it will flop, and you should start small and start with the organic shops and start with the farmers markets. We ignored them because we're not food and bev people, we're business people, and we're operators and executors. And we went for it, and it was the best decision because that allowed us to scale our business, bring our costs down, and ultimately be profitable across the business since the very beginning. Also, number one thing, hire good people. Don't cheap out on people. Hire quality people, because the extra 5, 10, 15 grand, whatever it is, if you can afford it, goes a really long way. And you want to hire people that are loyal and are with you for the journey, because what I've learned as the business has scaled, not that we haven't really lost people, but in other businesses that I've worked in, losing people and actually the frictional cost of losing people and having to retrain people and finding good people is really, really hard. So if you find good people, pay them well and look after them, whether it's benefits, whatever. But people ultimately will build the business, not the products.
I just had a 3-day in-person workshop with Yuri Levine, who is the founder of Waze and the founder of Move It. So he's got 2 unicorns currently, and he's building his 3rd one. And he said on hiring, I know we have to go, but I'll just say this.
No,
he said on hiring, when you hire someone, put a note in your calendar for a month later, and a month later, you know, ask your team how they are. Ask yourself, you know, knowing what I know now, would I hire them? If the answer is no, fire them immediately. And if the answer is yes, give them more equity and say, hey, I think you've done amazing this month. I really value, doesn't have to be a lot of equity, but I really value your contribution. And like, I know we agreed this equity package, but I'm going to increase it by a few hundred more shares, whatever it is. And then he says you have their loyalty for life. So that was
I really like that. And we've actually all of our employees have share options in the company, so it's all about alignment for me. But people, that's what I always say to our team.
Well, Levi, it's been a pleasure, and like I said off air, it's like I'm very happy for you. You look like you're killing it, and I look forward to maybe you'll hire us one day, as you become the next Red Bull. But yeah, pleasure to talk to you.
I have so many more questions, but we'll pick them up offline. Thank you so much for inviting me on. Anyone who's listening, any questions, find me on LinkedIn, DM me, I will reply.
Go buy some PerfectTed. But yeah, we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Bye.